What's that? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Forum. We're very glad to have you here, both those of you in person and those of you watching online. This is a very special occasion. From time to time, Plymouth groups take trips, and they're often the outgrowth of a study of some topic or another, and this is no exception. The pilgrimage to Iona was an outgrowth of the study of Celtic faith, and the folks who went are here to share their experiences with us, and I think we're in for a great treat. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before I pass the mic to David. If you have a technical problem, please use the chat function to get in touch with Alex or Slats up there. And if you have a question for the group, please use the Q&A function. And a big thanks to Alex and this morning to Slats for keeping all the pieces of the Sunday Forum in sync. They do a wonderful job week after week. And now I'd like to turn the mic over to David Astin, who's that's well earned, because David's teaching of Celtic faith and his enthusiasm for it was certainly an inspiration for this trip. So David, it's all yours.
And let's see if I can. This is my usual ungraceful part, working with technology. Let's see. Alex, help. I'm into the okay here. Okay. And then the share, you got that.
Yep.
And then we can just, okay.
There we go.
A round of applause for Slack. If you just tuned into color, look at the windows in the chapel. We have Iona blue. And it's also found many places around the globe, but it's definitely, well, hello. A community of people left Plymouth, and it was a journey that started about in 2016 with a book study that we did. And we'll talk more about that later. We're on a fine timeline We have 10 people of the community that will give you a brief expression of their time spent on Iona. You can imagine that St. Columba came to Kelowna in about 563. So we can rule out right away that Celtic Christianity is a New Age thing. Okay, there's a map there. About 130,000 people visit Kelowna every year, or Iona every year. And this has been going on for a very, very long time and has become a special place for many people. We would start our community with a ritual song. We started this way back, and the words might be a little bit different. I changed a couple, I've made it a zipper song that makes sense. So all of you in Iona and anyone else, please join in with this. We're gathering into a sacred circle, gathering into the presence of light. I open my heart and quiet my mind for the blessings about to unfold, for the blessings about to unfold. So all journeys have secret destinations of which the traveler is unaware. We're all traveling together. The Celts had a saying for those setting out on pilgrimage: let your feet follow your heart until you find your place of resurrection. Find your meaning. By the way, Celtic came from the Greek word for barbarian. And the Greek word for barbarian was the label that they got because they didn't have temples to worship in. And we know that they worship in nature. They worshiped in nature. You'll see a lot of that, I believe. Okay, imagine that this is one line. It's your life. And so the Celtic belief is that of the Celtic knot is commonly considered to signify the three forces of nature: water, fire, and earth. The line is said to signify the oneness of spirit, and the spirals represent spiritual growth. The gaps are the stages of life, death, and rebirth. Our connections with all others produces a tension that inspires us to make meaning for ourselves in community. Just a little history. I mentioned that we had started 1,453 years after Columba landed. We started our book study to learn more about one of the most accessible books to find out, and John Philip Newell is a modern prophet in my mind. And the things that we care about as a church community, and find there's still some chairs available back there, John and Linda. Okay. So reconnecting with the earth, and you see that one list. Those are all things that we work at Plymouth, I believe, every day. This is a book that we used to prepare for our journey. During COVID, we Zoomed, and different people in our community prepared the chapters, and we were able to connect via Zoom during COVID. The book was all about pilgrimage, helping us to understand what we might expect or not, and have we been on this path before? This is the most accessible book that I have found to tell the story. And if you're interested, Sacred Earth, Sacred Soul leads you through the history and feelings, beliefs of Celtic theology, cosmology, and it takes you through with the stories of 9 lives of people who have lived on the island or been influencing other people that lived on the island. Some of them are your heroes. You know about them. Beth.
Well, thank you, David. I also want to say that the photos that you're seeing are all of the island, taken, I don't know, by a variety of us or all by you, the community. When we began to plan, one of our wise participants, Linda Campbell, said, the pilgrimage begins when you make the decision to start. And so I will tell you that my pilgrimage to Iona began over 20 years ago, because on the island of Iona is an intentional Christian community, the epicenter for an intentional Christian community, the community of Iona. It is a dispersed community, so you do not have to live or reside there or visit there to be a member of the Iona community, but the community is committed to justice and social transformation, and they produce the most wonderful worship resources that I have used all of my ministry. And so I long ago dreamed of the day where I would be able to go to Iona. And I will tell you that while this community is very important to the island, it is not all that Iona is about. The community do lead services in the Abbey, which you can see in the background, and people come for a week or more to stay in the Abbey and work with the people who are part of the Iona community. But there are, as you saw, hundreds of thousands of others who come to Iona for different reasons. And then there are the residents there themselves. So I don't want to take up too much time because I really want you to hear from other people, but I have been asked to talk a little bit about the structure of our days on Iona. I will tell you that part of the pilgrimage experience absolutely is getting there, which involves, a couple of planes, some buses, and a few ferries. No trains, at least not by our group, but it's probably a possibility. It's a 2-day journey to actually get to the island from here. And we stayed in what is known as Bishop's House. So that's right here in the background. A lovely retreat center actually run by the Episcopal Church. This is in the representation of our rooms. Tiny, but very sufficient. Some of us faced the sea and others of us faced inland. And it really proved to be just a beautiful place to be for our group. Our days were both structured and unstructured. We gathered for 3 meals a day that the Bishop House staff prepared for us. Foods were all locally sourced. There's organic gardens on the island, which the 2 hotels and the retreat houses use. And meals were simple and delicious, and dessert was fabulous, I will say. We gathered together to worship in the morning and in the evening. And sometimes those were open to other people on the island, and sometimes they joined us, and sometimes it was just our group. Those became important times for our community to gather, to sort of ground and center ourselves and to process a bit of what we were feeling while we were on the island. We had the most wonderful guide who worked with us before we traveled and was with us the whole time, Felicity Collins. And this is Felicity here. And she would gather our group following breakfast and worship together to talk about possibilities for the day. And then it was free choice, but many times we chose to be together in one full group or in smaller groups. But the island was ours to explore and to experience as we felt called to do. You can see here's our group meeting room. And that became a place for both really wonderful conversations and engagement, also a place to kind of rest and restore. This is the chapel that is in Bishop's house. Here. Here's our menu and our eating space. And I'm sure other people will talk a little bit about where you could go on the island. And maybe is there another slide with more photos?
Yeah.
So these are just a few scenes from the island. This is the Abbey, which, as you see it now, was rebuilt in about the mid 1300s by the Benedictines. Some of us found that a really beautiful place to be. They had 2 worship services there a day. Others, it didn't speak to them quite as much as others, but it was an extraordinary space to be in. The feeling of history. Here's the outside of the Abbey. Linda, can you remind me what that big hill is called? Dunedin is the highest point of the island, and several of us did walk up to the top on our last day there. And the wind at the time was extraordinary. The wind to me was one of the holiest things on the island of Iona. It just had its own power. And then David, do you want to say something about the cross on the left?
The cross on the left is a memorial for the Duchess of Argyll, who loved the island. It's a great place to sit in the wind if you don't want to climb up the hill.
Are there more photos of the island? Oh, okay. I thought there was a Columbus Bay. So different sides of the island had different terrain. Many of us chose to walk a lot, to search for stones. You'll see many of us wearing a green stone. Green stones are part of Iona's sort of landscape. They're kind of hard to find. Some of them include serpentine, which predates fossils. And there's an underground quarry on Iona that no longer can be accessed except by special permission. But occasionally on the beach, you might find a quarry stone or a piece of serpentine. So many of us became rock collectors and didn't even know it. I would say that for me, the experience was made just ever the more blessed by the people with whom we traveled. So this group of pilgrims was truly extraordinary. All of you, I'm sure, have done something in terms of group travel, and sometimes there might be a little dynamic that is off, or a person that's extra annoying or something. That did not happen with this group. Just the most beautiful group to travel with. And I think for many of us, it is what made the experience what it was. So I'm just really eager to hear other people's testimony. And I would welcome any conversation about Iona. And what I tell people is I'm still processing it. I had to move through a period of expectation and then take the gifts from the island, of which there are many. And so, and I really hope to go back someday.
Thank you, Beth. On creativity, when we consider creativity, we are considering the most elemental and innermost and deeply spiritual aspects of who we are. The great 13th century mystic Meister Eckhart asks, what is it that remains after we are gone? And his answer is, that which is inborn in me remains. That which we give birth to from our depths is that which lives on after us. That which is inborn in us constitutes our most intimate moments, intimate with self, intimate with God, the creative spirit, and intimate with others. To speak of creativity is to speak of profound intimacy. It is also to speak of our connecting to the divine in us and of our bringing the divine back to the community. That is so critical for us to lay our offerings of our co-creation back at the table of our community. And that's really what this is about this morning. Linda, you can, or you can, that microphone, right, the microphone right there is on.
Is it on?
Yep.
Yes,
You
it's
can-
on.
You can pull it out if you want, so you can.
That's all right. It's fine. So Iona for me is a deeply wild and sacred landscape of earth, stone, sea, and sky. She was created on the oldest stone on earth and holds that. Oh, it's not working. I don't know how to turn.
Testing.
Just closer. Okay. For me, Iona is a deeply wild and sacred landscape of earth, stone, sea, and sky. She was created on the oldest stone on earth, and she holds that strength while being honed and cleansed over millennia by the winds and sea that surround her. On Iona, there are wild places that drew my soul into an awe of nature's beauty. And there are places that shield and protect like a mother's embrace. As I walked this land, I sensed communion with a wild and ancient spirit.
And I didn't bring mine with written, so David's going to move to the next slide. A friend of mine who was on the pilgrimage with us has a spiritual practice of writing a haiku every day. And so I adopted that practice while I was there. And these are some of the haiku that I wrote. One community, individual journeys, one God who loves all. Ever-changing sky, just as each pilgrim changes, what is my pilgrimage? In life, in nature, God's ever-changing landscape, storm before the calm. Waves roil the water, just as it does in real life. Then deep peace of source. On the shore, alone, may this memory return in the midst of fear.
And you can stay seated unless you want to
I'll just stand up.
stand up, that's fine.
So my name is Linda Simey, and for me, Iona was a journey of the mind, body, and soul with precious friends. My mind and soul expands, knowing in the depth of my being, my connection to others and all of creation, exploring my own experience and through deep conversation, the experiences of others, laughter and tears, singing and silence, movement and being still, tasting, listening, seeing, feeling the world in a new way, realizing that spirituality is everything. Every bit of life is holy. Pilgrimage is about discovering more of everything. There are no limits. The word that captures the experience for me is spaciousness.
And my name is Chris Munch, and I wanted to share a few things about my experience at Iona. I knew that Iona was the next step on my spiritual journey. I had become acquainted with Celtic Christianity and really embraced it. I had begun to experience the divine as an inexpressible but dynamic inner presence that flows through all things. And I think that came partly as a result of COVID and spending more time outdoors. The Iona experience provided me with an abundance of encounters with the divine in very tangible and visceral ways. And I'm going to catalog some of these experiences. First one, the benediction of a moonrise over the ocean on the very first night. Sharing the peace in a 12th century abbey and hiking home afterwards, arm in arm with comrades on a dark path lit by our torches. Torches was the word they used for our flashlights. The blessing of communing and heartfelt sharing with other Plymouth pilgrims. Dolphins leaping with joy alongside our boat on the way to the Isle of Strata. Rising energy from stones of all colors, shapes, and sizes. I have a bowl, if you'll look on the screen, of my stones that I keep on our island in my kitchen. And so I continue to receive energy from those stones. The song that the wind off the ocean played on Felicity's harp. One afternoon we went down to the north end of the island and the wind was strong that day. And Felicity, our facilitator, had her harp and she held it up for the wind and it played such a cosmic, mystical song for us. And then finally the spaciousness, as Linda has called, I'm a tree person. I'm a lake person, so I wasn't really expecting to be moved by the island because there are no trees, there are no lakes. But there's a spaciousness of the island. And this is the part that I wanted to express. A spaciousness of the island where I could breathe with the awareness that every breath I take is the breath of God. Finally, Tuesday night of the week was a healing service. And my niece Sarah was in the process of dying of a very rare and aggressive cancer. And she was on my heart the entire trip. Prayers at that healing service in that 12th century abbey, uttered by people from all over the world, each in their own language, touched me deeply.
Yeah. You can speak.
I'm Joan Parsons, and I was a latecomer to the group. I had heard about it, but I didn't get my name on the list, and I left within 2 weeks before. I just got started with it. I did manage to read the book before we left. So when we arrived, I didn't know many of the other pilgrims on the trip, so I kind of wandered off by myself, exploring the island, and I discovered this wonderful place called the Nunnery. It was a reconstructed abbey, or part of the abbey. It was built in the early 1200s, I think, by the nuns that started there. They were called the Black Nuns because they wore black robes. I didn't see them, of course, because they weren't there anymore. But I just somehow that nunnery called to me, and I went back frequently. I wanted to just experience it. So I sat either in a drizzle or in the sunlight and just meditated, read my book, closed my eyes, stared at the rocks. It was just something unusual. I just loved it. And I just kept going and I called it my space. So I even snoozed once or twice sitting there. And it was very comforting and it was all mine. So later, when I came home, I couldn't really find words to describe it. There weren't enough words to put it together. So when people asked me what it was about, what was the trip like, I just said, I don't know. I think it was nothing but everything.
Thank you, John.
I'm Nancy Peterson, and Iona is a thin place where we see divine light if we're paying attention in each moment. The threshold between the seen and the unseen. Being in a place like that, I could experience my husband Dan's, oh shoot, being very much with me, even as he was home being tended by his caregivers. To really experience Iona, we had to leave behind our cultural habit of separating experience, separating spirit from matter. All are very dualistic tendencies. And in doing so, we could more fully experience this place of heaven we've been given. I was blessed with compassion from the moment I first saw Dan fall several years ago. In that moment, I saw him as a little boy who'd been stricken with polio, and it broke my heart wide open. And that openness invited Dan to become more open. In our last 8 or 10 years together before his death in October, we were blessed with an amazing closeness. We always enjoy travel. We always enjoyed traveling together and reading.
Reading together. Excuse me, let's turn this on.
Reading. But since his death, I'm reconciling myself to still having him in my life, but in a different form. A form that's making itself known to me in a whole new way. I trust the process thanks to my experience in Iona.
And with this communion, the gifts that Nancy has presented us are food that we commonly found in Iona: vanilla fudge and shortbread. So you can commune after we're finished.
I'm reading Rick's, my husband's, because he's at choir. So here I am, Rick Simey. I began as a pilgrim skeptic, but I left Iona fulfilled, a skeptic no more. The key ingredients for me were sharing this experience with Linda and our fellow travelers, daily routines at Bishop's house, group meetings in the common room, chapel services led by Beth, and our family style meals. We had opportunities for shared experiences, yet ample unstructured time. The day before we left, Beth asked us to share 2 things: our vision of the future and a word that comes to mind. My vision was possibilities, and the word was grace. These words stick with me. Felicity asked us to craft a 6-word memory of Iona. My 6 words were new possibilities and connections created here. And that remains true. Finally, Beth asked us what we would leave behind and what we would take with us. I left behind, yet carried with me as well, a powerful sense of gratitude. And I took with me an intention to discern and deepen my spiritual side, a work in progress.
I'm Bryce Hamilton, and just a little bit more on the island. It is very small. It's 1 mile wide by 3 miles long, and wind. The healing wind, I'd call it, it was there all the time. I stay in touch with Iona daily. I look at the weather conditions there every single day. The wind tends to run between 15 miles an hour and 25 miles an hour most days. And just last week, there was one day when it was 40 miles an hour. So wind's a big deal. Well, each of us had our own reason for undertaking the Iona pilgrimage. And a very important one for me was to devote significant time to contemplative prayer. And this I did accomplish, and it was done amidst the warm and loving companionship of my fellow travelers, most of whom I barely knew before the trip. In the multitude of shared experiences, there was such a wonderful sense of camaraderie. This I'll never forget. Thanks, group. Upon my return home, my daughter asked for one word to describe the week away, but my response was immediate: joy. David caught me at my favorite place. This is I consider this kind of an outdoor monastic cell of sorts. I sat there every single day for some amount of time, usually more than once during the day. It was behind our lodge down on water's edge, and there were bushes all behind me all the way around. And I could look out, see the ferry coming in, going out, or I could look across the water and just be in quiet contemplation for long periods of time. It was joy.
Hi, my name is Bill Davini. And the Abbey Church on Iona became a focus for me. It was built in stages on the site of St. Columba's original structure from the 560s. The Abbey and the nunnery were begun in the late 1100s, completed after 1203, and expanded in the 15th century. After the Scottish Reformation, Iona and many other abbeys were dismantled and abandoned, and their monks and libraries dispersed. The abbey lay in ruins until the 20th century, when it was rebuilt. The reconstruction continues to this day. For me, the abbey is a metaphor for my Christian faith. It's filled with images and forms that call me into contemplation. It's a product of an ancient tradition that is constantly being reinterpreted. One powerful example of this was a healing service that we experienced while on Iona. For several days, all island residents and visitors were invited to leave requests for prayers at the Abbey, which would be incorporated into the service. The evening of the service, we arrived to find 4 large wooden bowls filled with prayer requests. And I thought to myself, the service could take many hours. In the dim light of evening, members of the Iona community passed out the contents of the bowls to all of the attendees. At a signal, we all began to read the prayers out loud together. Though most were in English, a number were in other languages. Of those given to me, the one I will never forget simply read, "Priez pour ma famille et pour moi." Pray for my family and for me. The power of all those prayers said together was palpable. And my hope is that this power rained down on all those that made their requests, as it did for us who said them.
Hi, I'm Ruth Davini, and I'm told I must be brief, which is very hard when you think of Iona. So I guess the one thing that I remember are the opportunities we had to appreciate little moments of beauty and connection. And one of the experiences that I remember was encountering a group of women walking toward the sea one of them apologized to us for walking so slowly. And we realized that we all needed to be walking slowly to notice the beauty around us. And as we were talking, a beautiful rainbow stretched out across the sky, reminding us of God's love and promises. The encounter with beauty could have been missed had we not slowed down. Sharing this encounter transformed us for the day, an experience we will carry with us in our hearts, alongside, I must admit, the memory of the taste of scones.
Thank you for the voices of the soul of our community. This community expression, these are 10, there are 12 more or so. And so find them, ask them how Iona affected them or is still affecting them. So ultimately, the pilgrimage leads us back home again. We always return bearing gifts for the community. We always are called back to share what we have been given with others. This will look different for each of us. And you heard that to that group. It's teachers are known for their thievery online. And this is a great picture off our website of Plymouth. So the pilgrim returns home not with answers. Instead, they receive better questions, questions that bring the pilgrimage experience into daily life and reveal depth in all that they see around them. We are on pilgrimage back at Plymouth, and it has been transformative. Questions can be asked of all of these people or any of them. Make sure you invite yourself for some of Nancy's communion essentials. We're pleased that you came today and look forward to having this. Oh, one more. This is the group, the Iona A-team. And we rejoice that Beth was able to lead us in so many different experiences and did it so adroitly. And for you, when will you begin that long journey into yourself? If you want to go further down the rabbit hole, there will be a bibliography with some links and resource ideas that can be found in the Marsh Library here at church. And thank you, Cheryl Davenport, she's got many books that have been put on the wooden rack that apply to Celtic ideas and theology. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David, and thank you all for just some wonderful thoughts. Are there any questions for the group?
You didn't say anything about
Oh.
Yes, it warrants itself, even at the embarrassment of one of our travelers. The created expression or the co-created expression that we have that is world-class is coming from Linda Campbell, who talked about her work. If you haven't been to Iona, these are wonderful pictures. If you've been to Iona, they make you weep. They are so, it's like she painted her heart against the Iona experience. And then in joy we're able to bring it back. And that creative piece, if you want to dig deeper into that, Matthew Fox has written a book on creativity that is a good reminder for all of us to share the gifts that we have brought. So please wander amongst these wonderful paintings, and I'm sure Linda will be able to stick around a little bit to chat about that.
Linda, I have a question. Did you paint these on the island or did you paint them after you came back? I realize you've been there more than once, so.
So I painted, I've been to Iona twice. I painted about 5 of them after my first trip. And then the rest of them after I came back this time. So they are all just from the inspiration of being on the island.
Oh, wonderful.
When you're over there, is that, or is it just in the mind?
Some are the question is, do I paint from photographs? No, but some are representative of things that are actual spaces on the island, and some are just my imagination and the spirit that comes from the island.
Any other questions? I have one.
This-
What is the next trip?
Actually, there's a sacred trip not coming from this church, but Sally Howell Johnson is doing a sacred trip to sacred places in Wales this summer. And I don't know if she has any spots left or not. Joan is going on that, and I think Ruth and Bill are going, and Bob and Tom and Jean are going. So
There's somebody asking to stop sharing the screen so they could see the
some things are easier said than done. I can find my cursor here. Okay.
David, could you tell us a thing or two about the classes that preceded the trip? I think you led 2 of them. Is that right?
Yeah, the first book that we did was The Rebirthing of God by John Philip Newell. And if you're looking for a modern prophet, a way forward, COVID has caused lots of changes in our church and many churches around the world. And at first, without looking at the pathway forward, Newell has offered us 8 pillars that will be a part of the new church going forward. And I might add that Plymouth, with its many fingers of activity, racial justice, environment, neighborhood caring, the compassion. If you go back to that book, Newell wants us to get in touch with our compassion. He wants us to get in touch again with nature. When we divorced ourselves from nature, we divorced ourselves from the one, the whole. We can't exist sustainably without that. So, and that's a way forward. That book was, we started the class in Jackman, and I see Gail Sharp came in just a little while ago. Gail met with Judy Takinen and Sally Howell, and who else was there? Pardon me? Kathy Crooks was with us. And that's when we planned the first trip to Iona. And we were going great guns until we had problems, different things going on at church. And it was apparent that this was not a time to do a pilgrimage. And so, but going forward, it's interesting, and we had a good number of people at learning about it. It seems like without Jan Ravers, my sister in the back row there, was working with spiritual formation. And she's the one that got us going and created this scenario. So we had that book study in Jackman once a month for 8 months. And if you read that book, you'll find your heroes in that book. You'll find Merton, you'll find many others that lead us together. And just out of a curiosity, it would be interesting to see if any of you pick that book up and read it and see that that's what Plymouth is doing in rebirthing of God. So.
Thank you, David. And thank you all for being here. And I hope you'll come back next week when the Immigrant Welcoming and Working Group is sponsoring the program, and Tom Haynes of Mayflower's Global Justice Advocacy Team will talk about immigration from Central America, Guatemala and Honduras, and the causes of that go beyond what we read in the media. So please join us again next week, and thank you again for coming.
Oh.